Hello and welcome to my ultimate sleep guide. My name is Jonathan Potter, and I'm going to cover how you can fall asleep faster, stay asleep, and get better quality sleep. I'll be talking about why you should sleep, the science behind sleep, and protocols that you can use to improve your sleep. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and this is not medical advice. This video is strictly for educational and entertainment purposes only. It's intended for those over the age of 18. I do not prescribe anything, and you should speak to your doctor before changing any protocols in your life. Second disclaimer, everyone is different. A lot of health studies are based on general populations. What may work for others may not work for you, and everyone needs to take an individual approach to their health. Only you will know what's best for you. So here's a quick story on why I know everything I do about sleep. I used to have really bad insomnia. I would have trouble falling asleep. It'd take me 1-2 hours just to fall asleep. And then I would end up sleeping into midday. I would snooze my alarm, and this would just go on for hours. I'd get terrible sleep. I had trouble falling asleep, and I thought I just had sleep problems. But then I started doing a lot of research on sleep itself and learned everything I could. Now today, I get 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night, closer to 8 to 9. I go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time. And it's not really from discipline, it's because my body is tuned to get tired when I want and be alert when I want. And occasionally I have rough nights from here and there, but 90-95% of the time I get the sleep that I want, and it helps me improve my performance throughout the day. So everything that I cover here is something that I've probably tried or I do currently, and it improves my sleep. So why should we sleep? Well, let's hear it from some experts. I have a few quotes that I'll read that I really like. Sleep is probably the single most effective thing you can do to reset your brain and body health. Matthew Walker. He's a sleep scientist and wrote the book Why We Sleep. Next, resets our ability to be focused, alert, and emotionally stable, which is from Andrew Huberman from the Huberman Lab podcast. He's a neuroscientist, and a lot of what I cover, he has great videos on, and you should check out. And this next one, makes you live longer, enhances your memory, makes you more creative, makes you look more attractive, makes you slim, lowers your food cravings, protects you from cancer and dementia, wards off colds and flu, lowers your risk of heart attack, stroke, diabetes. You'll feel happier, be less depressed, be less anxious. And that's from Alex Hormozi, who is an entrepreneur. He has a bunch of YouTube videos that are also pretty interesting if you're into running a business. And I always say that sleep is the foundation of your health. I mean, you spend a third of your life sleeping. It's well worth the investment to improve it. So let's talk about the science of sleep before we dive into how you can improve sleep. You kind of need to understand a little bit of mechanism before you dive too much into protocol. So sleep is governed by two forces, adenosine and a circadian force, or your circadian rhythm. So adenosine is a molecule in our nervous system and body that builds up the longer that we're awake. Adenosine gives us kind of a sleep hunger and makes us sleepy. The more you sleep, the less adenosine you have. Your circadian rhythm is a 24-hour clock based on a central clock in our brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Probably messed that up. The clock has connections with every cell and organ in your body, and light that enters our eyes, especially into these melanopsin ganglion cells. I'm going to talk about that quite a bit in this video. They send signals to this central clock, and then from there it essentially sends a protein through your body to communicate or synchronizes everything with temperature, which we'll dive into after this. But let me talk about the sleep stages, which most people probably have heard about, like deep sleep and REM sleep. So on average, it takes most people 90 minutes to go through one of these full sleep cycles. So falling asleep, light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep. Some people take longer, and maybe people take shorter. I usually hear it's from 90 to 120 minutes, but most people are like 90 minutes, an ultradian cycle, essentially. So stage one is essentially transitioning into sleep. You lay down and you start to fall into sleep is kind of stage one. It doesn't last very long. but you do enter this stage every time you go through these cycles. So at the end of a 90-minute cycle, you wake up briefly and then start to fall back asleep. Probably don't remember most of the times you do this. Stage 2 is light sleep. We spend 50% of our time there. It's kind of what happens after you start to fall asleep. And then we head into deep sleep, which is also known as slow wave sleep. A lot of body repair, physical repair happens during this time. Muscles, bones, tissues all grow or repair or heal. Your memories are consolidated, learning is processed, blood sugar and your metabolic functions kind of level out. It does a lot of immune functions. It's very important. And then REM sleep, which most people know is like dream sleep or rapid eye movement sleep. Your brain is just as active during REM sleep as it is during the day. The brain kind of paralyzes the body during this time so you don't act out your dreams, and keeps you safe. It's critical for cognitive functioning, learning, memory, and it's very important for your emotional health. If you ever notice missing REM sleep, or like you have to get up early, you may be more emotional because you didn't have time to process your emotions from the previous day. You tend to get more deep sleep in the beginning of your bout of sleep. So during like the first 4 hours, you usually get more deep sleep. And then during the later 4 hours or so, depending on how long you sleep, you get more REM sleep. So, and that's important to know, because if you go to bed late, then you will actually miss out on deep sleep. Your body will do its best to try to catch up with how much deep sleep you're going to get, but it won't be enough. And once you hit that second half of the night, you're going to transition into more REM sleep. And the same is true if you only sleep in the beginning 4 hours. So if you miss your next 4 hours, you get up early or something, you're going to get a lot less REM sleep. And your body won't really have a chance to recover from that too much. So the next night it will usually rebound, and you'll end up getting more REM sleep, and you won't get deep sleep. So it's really important to try to get the same amount of sleep every night, as well as getting enough sleep every night. Because if you don't, you'll end up getting in this cycle where your body is constantly rebounding, trying to get deep sleep or REM sleep, and it's not going to get enough of either. So what can you do about this? Well, I'm going to briefly go over some topics that we're going to cover, and I'll go into more detail about them. So you can get more sunlight or bright light in the morning. Sunlight is preferable. You avoid light later in the day. Modify your temperatures at the right time, which we're going to talk about temperature, I mentioned in a little bit. Use caffeine the right way, because there's a wrong way to use it. Most people know this, though. Using naps and non-sleep deep rest protocols correctly. And there's a couple other smaller topics that I'll cover towards the end. So let's talk about light. It's very important for sleeping well, and is something that's very important to happen in the morning. You'd actually expect that a lot of things to help sleep would be either during sleep or at time of going to bed, but light is actually the most important thing to do at the beginning of your day, right after you wake up. So normally we don't think about it that way, but light starts the whole process. Earlier I was talking about the melanopsin ganglion cells in our eyes. Well, those are the cells that are responsible for reading the light that enters our eyes, and it's very important for our circadian clock, like I mentioned. So you want to get bright light early on in the day, and the cells respond best to a quality and amount of light. So it's not just any light that you can get. You need a very bright light, and it helps if it's a very certain quality of light, which comes from sunlight. So sunlight at a low solar angle has different light that's going through it as opposed to like when it's overhead. So right at sunrise is the best time to get sunlight. If you can even just watch the sunrise, that is the best you can do. So on a clear day, you want a minimum of 5 minutes of sunlight. If it's cloudy, 10 minutes, and if it's rainy or overcast, you want to aim for 30 minutes, because the light won't be as bright with the clouds blocking it. But during a fairly clear day, it will be very bright, and especially if you get that low solar angle, you don't need as much time. However, if you want to be optimal, you probably want to spend 30 to 40 minutes outside getting sun every single day, because all of these things average out. So if one day is really clear and you get a lot of sun, and then the next day is kind of rainy and you don't get as much, it kind of balances out. So you don't need to get all of your sun at like every single day necessarily. You can get more on some days and less on others, and it will balance out. And if you're like me, you get up really early or something along the lines of that, you can't get outside right away. Let's say there's something you have to do indoors. The overhead lights in your house are not bright enough. And most lights are not bright enough. Your phone's not bright enough. So you can get something called a sunlight simulator. There's also other bright lights, like ring lights and other things that are bright enough. You can use like a light meter. There's an app on the phone that you can use to measure the light. But I would recommend getting a daylight simulator. They're more expensive, but they're going to be higher quality. So it's going to be bright enough to use, but you still want to get sunlight later on in the day. So I get up before the sun rises, so I usually use a bright light for an hour, and then about an hour later the sun rises, and then I will go outside for 30 minutes. So, but keep in mind, and I will talk about the negative sides of light, that the overhead lights, artificial lights, and your phone lights are bright at night. So the longer you're awake, the more sensitive your melanopsin cells are to light. And you're going to want to dim lights before bed and avoid any light exposure during bedtime hours. Light during bedtime hours, whenever you normally go to sleep, for most people is going to be like 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. Those are the critical times to avoid light, because it can suppress the release of dopamine, inhibit your learning, and it signals to our habenula, which is a part in our brain, which makes us less happy and disappointed, and it can lead to depression. And I believe this actually could happen to people who are on a different schedule too, which is very dangerous. However, I'm not sure on that. So if you need to use light later on in the day, you use lower lights such as desk lights, floor lights, not overhead lights. And as a special note, like moonlight, candlelight, firelight are not bright enough to affect you at night, so you're free to use those. So if you can read by candlelight, that would actually be perfect. And if you can't avoid light for some reason in like the later half of the day, you can use blue blockers, which I will talk about blue light briefly later on, or you can wear sunglasses. Sometimes when I have to go to like a work meeting late at night, I will wear sunglasses to help block out as much light as possible, so that way when I get home I can go to bed, because I go to bed earlier than most of the work meetings are sometimes. And another thing you can do, just like how you want to view the sunrise in the morning, viewing the sunset is important. If you view the sunset, it signals to your brain that it's the end of the day. And that helps because you avoid some of the effects of viewing bright light at night. It reduces the effects of suppressing melatonin, which I'm going to cover here in a sec. So you may have heard of melatonin. It's a hormone that comes from the pineal gland, and it makes us sleepy. And it kind of releases later on in the day as your cortisol drops and is modulated by light. So if you get light, it will suppress melatonin. And as dusk approaches, your melatonin starts to rise. So it, peaks around the time that you're going to bed and while you're in bed. And since light will suppress the pineal, it suppresses the production of melatonin. So that's why you don't get sleepy during the day usually. So it's important to avoid as much light in the evening and night to prevent your melatonin from being suppressed. So since I mentioned cortisol, I'll cover that too. So when you wake up in the morning, it's because of a rise in cortisol. It's sometimes called the stress hormone. However, it has a lot more important functions other than regulating just your stress functions. It helps you stay awake and alert, and there's a normal rise in cortisol throughout the day. Getting early morning light will especially help prime your cortisol response. So, viewing that sunlight in the morning is going to help you have this healthy rise of cortisol, and then it will drop off later in the day, and that's when your melatonin starts to rise. So earlier I talked about our circadian clock in our brain, and it kind of gets primed by light and signals to the rest of our body using temperature. And if our circadian rhythm is set properly, then our temperature kind of falls into this regular pattern, very similar to your cortisol and melatonin. So our temperature tends to be lowest like 2 hours before waking up, which is our temperature minimum. And then afterwards, it starts to rise as you wake up, and then it will peak about 11 hours after waking. After then, it starts to fall back down again. And what's important about our temperature rising is that we feel more alert as our temperature kind of goes up. And as temperature drops, we kind of feel sleepy. So you might actually notice after this 11-hour period, when it starts to drop a little bit, you might get a little sleepy. And then let's talk about cold and hot, or exposing yourself to cold and hot, really. If you get into an ice bath, an ice shower, a cold shower, you are going to get a rebound increase in thermogenesis. So if I get in a cold shower, then when I get out of that, my temperature is going to go up because I just dropped my temperature down. So it's going to start to raise up. And by doing that, it's going to make me more alert. And cold also releases some adrenaline as well and increases dopamine, which gives us energy and makes us more alert and awake for the morning. So it's great to take a cold shower in the morning. Not so great during the night because you can cause yourself to be awake. And then if you get into like a hot bath, a sauna, or a hot shower, you'll have your body temperature increase, and then it's going to drop when you leave. And that drop is going to make you sleepy. So that works great for the evenings. I take a hot shower every night to give that temperature drop to make me sleepy, fall asleep. You do have to be careful, though, with cold and hot exposure because of how they shift your temperature around, and they can do the opposite of what you want. So like I was saying, cold later on in the day might not be a good idea, and hot early on in the day might not be a good idea. I think hot early on in the day is less impactful than cold later in the day, though. Effects depend on the person, and exercise and eating also increase our temperature. So if you want to get the most benefit, you should exercise early in the morning for the temperature increase, and generally eat a little early in the morning as well. Of course, you should just get exercise whenever you can, as long as it doesn't disrupt your sleep. So you can exercise later in the day if that's the only time you can exercise, but you might want to avoid doing it too late to hit that temperature increase. Although, like I said before, it's individual, so some people will be able to sleep better after exercising at night. You just really have to figure it out for yourself. And then when you eat, you also get an increase in thermogenesis regardless of what you eat. You eat early in the day, you can support your biological clock and make you more alert early on in the day. And you might want to avoid eating late in the day because of this. I usually stop eating 2 to 3 hours before bed. Small snacks seem to be okay. You just don't want to eat too much. Eating a lot, though, will make you sleepy. Like some people after like Thanksgiving will feel sleepy after eating. This is because your body diverts a lot of blood to your gut to help you digest. However, I don't think it's a good strategy to eat too much food before bed. Some people can get acid reflux, and I personally just feel uncomfortable sleeping with a lot of food because it doesn't have gravity to help digest all your food properly. So it really depends on you. So let's talk about caffeine. And most people drink coffee or tea or some form of caffeine in the morning. You may not, and that's okay, but let's talk about if you do. So caffeine acts as an adenosine antagonist. So what that means is that it blocks your adenosine receptors. And I talked about earlier how adenosine is something that builds up the longer you're awake, and it makes you feel sleepy. So this caffeine will block those receptors and blocks the sleepy signal. It doesn't stop adenosine, however, so it will continue to accumulate. And once caffeine wears off, adenosine can bind to the receptors and cause a crash. And if you have caffeine too early on in the day, it can cause an increased effect where it binds stronger and causes you to get sleepy really quickly. If you want to avoid the crash, a tip that Andrew Huberman has is you should delay caffeine 90 to 120 minutes from waking. It will help with your body clearing out any leftover adenosine from waking up, especially when you get your light and you wake up with cortisol. So when you drink caffeine, you also have an increase in cortisol. So if you drink it at the same time or around the same time as you get up, you'll have your increasing cortisol from waking up, and then you'll get another increase in cortisol from the caffeine, and then it will drop back down later even harder. Whereas if you let your cortisol kind of rise naturally up, and then you have caffeine a little later, it won't drop off as much because the caffeine will last a little longer past when your cortisol normally would be dropping. It kind of levels it out better. So you stop having too much adenosine because you kind of clear that out in the morning with that wakefulness, and you stop the double cortisol spike essentially. Caffeine also increases dopamine, which makes us feel good, motivated, and gives us energy. It's related to epinephrine or adrenaline, and that epinephrine and adrenaline are actually made from dopamine. So it has a second effect of kind of just giving us more adrenaline, and being more alert, and energized. So it doesn't just block the sleepiness signal. And kind of like how I've been mentioning, everything is different for everyone, and everyone's going to tolerate caffeine differently. So it's going to be something you have to figure out for yourself. If you don't drink caffeine, you might want to try it for the dopamine increase to give you that little boost of energy. It does affect cognitive functions and improve them in most cases. I will probably cover a video on caffeine. I don't normally drink coffee, but because of all the health benefits, I might start doing it. So I'll cover a video later on that, especially people who are not sensitive and don't drink caffeine because they either get enough sleep or feel enough energy during the day. If you follow this, you should probably get you should feel pretty good most of the time and might not even need caffeine. But like I was saying, some people might not even take any caffeine ever because they're too sensitive. And you also need to keep in mind the half-life, which is where most people get in trouble with caffeine. They will drink caffeine in the morning, it will start to wear off, they'll feel tired again, so they drink more, and then they feel tired again and they drink more. The problem is the half-life of caffeine. It's variable on the person, but it's about 5 to 6 hours. And then the quarter life, which is half of the half-life, is 10 to 12 hours. Meaning that in 5 hours, half of the caffeine you've drank is still in your system. So if you have 4 cups of coffee, which I know is a lot, but if you have 4 cups of coffee, you will still have 1 cup in your system 10 to 12 hours later. So if you're drinking multiple cups of coffee throughout the day, by the time you go to bed, you could still have 1 whole cup of coffee in your system, as if you just drank that cup of coffee at the same time. So you got to watch out for how long the caffeine will last. So you really shouldn't drink caffeine 8 to 10 hours before bedtime. And some people might be like, wait, I drink caffeine in the evening and I sleep fine. Having caffeine in your system at the time of sleep can affect your deep sleep, and you won't sleep as deep anymore. It can be up to 30% less, and you would have to age 10 to 12 years for the same effect. So even though you can fall asleep, you're not going to get as good quality of sleep. And that's important to remember, that there's going to be lots of things that make you fall asleep, but it doesn't necessarily make you stay asleep or get as better quality sleep. And on that topic, I'm going to touch on alcohol and marijuana. Now, alcohol doesn't help you sleep. Some people might take a nightcap at night or have a couple drinks and they fall asleep faster, right? No, you lose consciousness faster. You don't sleep, you don't fall asleep faster. So you'll lose consciousness, and then your body is still waiting to fall asleep. You just aren't aware about it. So it also fragments your sleep, so you'll probably wake up more. It blocks REM sleep, which is critical for cognitive functions, which I mentioned before. So if you drink alcohol, you might not emotionally process things, and then you might be kind of grumpy the next day. Excuse me. You get a 50% drop in growth hormone, which is vital for metabolism and repair of tissues. And even a single glass of alcohol has this effect. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but you will pay the price if you drink alcohol. Marijuana also disrupts your sleep. It's not a sedative like alcohol, so it will make you fall asleep faster. However, it has withdrawal and tolerance dependencies, meaning that to get the same effect, you'll need more of it. And if you stop using it, you'll get a rebound severe insomnia effect. It also blocks REM sleep, just like alcohol does. So you'll miss out on a lot of critical cognitive functioning and emotional processing. So, not here to tell you what to do, but you'll also pay a price with that. So keep that in mind. And if you mix either of these with caffeine, you could block both your deep sleep and REM sleep. So essentially, you're just not getting any benefits of sleep, really. So let's talk about naps and non-sleep deep rest. Like caffeine, everyone's going to tolerate naps differently. Some people can nap for 90 minutes and then go to bed late at night and be fine. Others can't take naps without harming sleep. And even if you don't get enough sleep during the night, you shouldn't use a nap to make up for it because it could end up harming your sleep. But I should mention that naps do have a lot of benefits. They have benefits on cardiovascular health, blood pressure, levels of cortisol, learning, memory, emotional regulation. Studies show that naps increase rates of learning when done in bouts of 20 minutes to a 90-minute learning bout. So you nap for 20 minutes and study for 90 minutes. And NASA did a study that a short nap of 26 minutes improved mission performance by 34% and improved daytime alertness by 50%, which is actually really big for such a small time commitment. However, like I said, you do have to be careful because some people are going to have trouble falling asleep after a nap, or falling asleep at night after having like a daytime nap. So taking a nap will clear out some of the adenosine that you've built up, and then it will be harder to fall asleep because you kind of lose some of your sleepiness and your sleep hunger. It's like if you ate a snack right before dinner, you eat less dinner. So if you take a nap, you may sleep less during the night or have trouble falling asleep in general. And if you struggle with sleep, you probably just shouldn't take naps. I will cover non-sleep deep rest, which is a benefit that you can use. And if you do choose to nap, limit naps to 20 to 25 minutes to limit grogginess if you need to get up and be alert for afterwards. And don't nap more than 90 minutes per day. 90 minutes, like I mentioned before, is an ultradian cycle. It gets you a full cycle of sleep. And sleeping more than that kind of it will probably disrupt your sleep no matter who you are, because you'll start getting multiple cycles of sleep. It's almost if you're just going to bed right there. So non-sleep deep rest is a term coined by Andrew Huberman. So he calls it NSDR. And NSDR includes, but is not limited to, meditation, yoga nidra, which is a type of meditation, I believe, hypnosis, like clinical sleep hypnosis, and Andrew doesn't talk about this, but in my opinion, non-sleep deep rest is this, but closing your eyes in the dark, which I do all the time. And non-sleep deep rest can kind of give you some of the benefits of taking a nap or short naps. It's been shown to increase the learning the learning that you get in bouts of 20 minutes to 90 minutes. So you can replicate almost the same effects by just doing some like meditation, yoga nidra, just laying down in your bed like I do. It also helps kind of teach your body to get into a deep relaxation without sleeping. So it can kind of train you to, when you're laying down for the night, get yourself into relaxing so that way you can actually fall asleep. So it can help teach you how to calm down and fall asleep, which is something that you can just practice every day without affecting your sleep at all. So you can practice basically falling asleep without actually falling asleep. Because it's a practice that takes you from being alert to being in heightened relaxation. So anyone who has trouble with naps can use NSDR and get some of the same effects, and it will help you fall asleep later in the day. So it's kind of like a nap, except for you don't get the negative effects and you get some of the positive effects of being able to fall asleep. And I'm not going to touch on the hypnosis, but it can also teach you to bring yourself from a focused state into a deep rest state. It's nothing that I think I've tried it once, but it's something that I need to look into further, so I'm not going to recommend it. I would recommend meditation, yoga nidra, or just trying to relax with your eyes closed, which is what I like to do most of the time. So now you have all of this information. What is your day kind of going to look like if you were to follow a lot of this? So let me just cover that, and then we'll cover some smaller topics. And remember that even though this is an ideal day, you don't need to do it every day. You need to do it 80% of the time, or you need to do these effects or these different protocols 80% of the time, because the systems will average out. And if you're really hardcore, you can do it every day. I try to do it every day, but that's because I want to get 95% efficient sleep. I want to get the best sleep every single night, so I do this. But if you're just trying to improve your sleep from where you are, then you really only need to do this 80% of the time. So do it 5 to 6 days a week. If you stay up late one night, it's okay, because you're doing all this other work to kind of make up for that. So that's okay. So let's get into it. So in an ideal day, you would wake up early in the morning, right when the sun is rising. You'd probably go outside for a walk and enjoy the sunrise for 30 minutes. You get home, take a cold shower, and eat some breakfast when you get back. Then you'd head to the gym, or maybe a home gym, and do a morning workout. You drink a single cup of coffee after this workout, assuming it's 90 to 120 minutes later, and that's really all you need to be alert for the rest of the day. So you go about your day, you get outside, get some light in when you can, you eat lunch at the same time that you always do. You might get an afternoon nap in, or do some NSDR. And then once the sun starts setting, you take another walk, you enjoy the sunset, you may eat your last meal around this time, and then you come home, dim all the lights, and relax. An hour or two before bedtime, you start to wind down. Maybe you do some light stretching, meditate, read, listen to a podcast. You stop using screens, you put your phone away for the night, and you might write down in a journal, write down your concerns and clear out your emotions for the day. After all of this, you might take a hot shower and then get ready for bed. And you do this every single day at the same time with a consistent sleep and wake cycle. And I don't do exactly this, but I try to follow something similar. Like I mentioned, I wake up before the sun rises, so I don't have the benefit of watching the sunrise right after I wake up. So I usually get as much bright light as I can until I can go outside and view the sunlight. And I don't currently take cold showers, but it is a challenge that I might take up, and you may see videos later on of me taking the cold shower. But I pretty much do everything else. I don't always view the sunset. I try to. It's usually around the time I'm coming home, so sometimes it's difficult to get it in, at least at this time of the year. I imagine it will be a lot easier during the summertime. Actually, it might be harder, but I'm not sure. But I do try to do this as much as possible. If I ever come home and I'm a little sleepy, I will lay down for 20 minutes. I have trouble getting into, actually taking a nap, so I just lay down for 20 minutes with my eyes closed, and I feel refreshed afterwards. I also try to dim the lights a few hours before bed, generally, I think, like 3 hours or like 2 to 3 hours before bed. 2 hours minimum, 3 hours if I can. Sometimes we need more light in the room, so it doesn't always happen. But yeah, and then I usually, after like 2 hours before bed, I turn off all the screens, and the only screen I use is my Kindle, and I keep it on a low brightness. And then I usually read or relax for the rest of the night. And then I take a hot shower, and then I just go to bed. And by doing all of that at night, having that wind down, I find that it's really easy to fall asleep at night. So let's get into some smaller topics. Some of these things I may have mentioned before, and some of them will just be random things. So let's talk about blue light, because I did mention that earlier. And a lot of people say blue light is bad for you, but it's not really bad for you necessarily. It's good for you during the day. The sun gives out blue light. You should view bright blue light during the day, ideally from the sun, because it's going to help prime that cortisol. It's going to, make you alert for the rest of the day, and it's going to just set your entire circadian rhythm so that way you fall asleep at the appropriate time. Light will suppress the pineal and your production of melatonin, so you will stop producing melatonin after you wake up. You can use blue blockers later on in the day, like after sunset. However, your eyes will still respond to too bright light. So if you're wearing blue blockers, like I have a set here, they're only really good if you're also dimming the lights. Because if you have blue blockers on and just are viewing bright light, it's not really going to help you. So you really need to use it basically in combination of dimming the lights. Red light, kind of as a subtopic, red light does seem to be better at night as opposed to blue light. However, a lot of red light you can buy on the market will be too bright, so you need really dim red light if you want to go that route. So if you want light in the middle of the night, excuse me, you're going to want to get red light, but you want it to be really dim. So supplements. I know a lot of people are going to ask, just what can I take? What can I take to improve my sleep? It's not really in the scope of this video to cover. I will make another video that covers supplements you can take for sleep, and I will link it to this video, so whenever it comes out, you'll be able to, click down below or click on the screen to view that video. Really, you should just do everything you can before taking supplements and then add them further. Now, everyone's situation is going to be different, and some people might need to take supplements to get to a spot where they can get this kind of sleep. And I'll cover that later, and some people may even need to be on prescription drugs. However, you should try your best to follow natural biological protocols first, and then add additional like supplements or drugs to really, supplement your sleep rather than that be the only thing that gets you to sleep. And there is some benefit to taking supplements as well, even as someone who gets good sleep, because your brain kind of like learns from taking these supplements. So if you fall asleep faster by taking a supplement, it actually will help you fall asleep faster without the supplement. So it's important to go over, and I'll cover that in another video. Sleep apnea and breathing. So sleep apnea is bouts of suffocation or lack of oxygen when you're sleeping. And if you think you have sleep apnea or do have sleep apnea, you should definitely see your doctor. There's not a lot that I can cover for you. However, there are some things you can do to reduce it or improve it. And a lot of this stuff will help most people with breathing as well. So if you're heavy set, losing some weight can help, and I know you probably have already been told that, but it will help you breathe better. And other things you can do other than just losing weight is you can train yourself to be a nose breather. So breathing through your nose instead of your mouth. So you can put a little bit of medical tape on your mouth. Actually, I need that, so I'm going to get it. So you can use medical tape. I have these little strips that I can put on my mouth. I don't usually have too much of a problem, but I have this stuff just in case. I've tried out stuff. So you can put something like this on, or put some medical tape on your mouth and it basically will prevent you from breathing out of your mouth. I like these little strips better because they have a little hole in them just in case, so you don't wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, I can't breathe, just in case, of course. But it will be useful for everyone to help breathe out of your nose, because breathing out of your mouth has a lot of negative health benefits, and maybe we'll cover a video on breathing in the future, something that I want to learn more about too. Another thing you can do is do cardiovascular exercise only using your nose for breathing. So you can either just do that yourself, or you can use the medical tape method again to prevent yourself from breathing out of your mouth. And this will dilate your sinuses, and that will help you be able to take more air in through your nose. It's kind of just good for everybody to do this. And lastly, you can use something like nose strips, or I have this little thing that goes in your nose, which is very similar to a nose strip. And they kind of just like push out your nose more so you can take in more oxygen. And let's talk about staying asleep. So a lot of the biological functions that you follow to help you fall asleep, such as getting the light and optimizing your temperature, will also help keep you asleep. However, there's some things you can get. And once again, you should do those things if you can, because not everyone might not have all the means, so you might not be able to buy this stuff, or might be able to buy it slowly over time. So following the light, the dark, and the temperature the best you can will help. But this stuff will also help you fall asleep. Oh, some people. So I have a sleep mask here. Put it on my eyes. That will help keep the room dark, and that helps so you keep your melatonin production and don't suppress it. You just don't keep it too tight, and it can get a little warm because it blocks off your forehead, which is one of the spots that cools you down. The other spots are your hands and your feet. So some people shouldn't wear socks. I'm just going to dive into it real quick. Some people shouldn't wear socks because that's where you can expel heat. So if you run really hot, you shouldn't wear socks. And I'll cover cooling in a second. But another thing is earplugs. So I have a set of earplugs here. I used to use the little yellow ones that you just throw away after they're done, but I got a set that is reusable because I use them every night. Some people don't like wearing earplugs to go to sleep because you can sometimes hear your heartbeat. I don't actually get bothered by hearing my heartbeat, so it's not much of a problem. But I like it really, really quiet because I find that it helps me fall asleep. However, with it being really quiet, if a sound happens, it can wake you up in the middle of the night. So another thing you can do is have white noise or like a fan, so it kind of keeps a baseline of sound. So I use one that makes thunderstorm sounds. So it has a baseline of sound, so if there's any sounds outside, or like a dog barks, or any number of things happen, it won't wake you up as easily because you kind of already have sound going on. So the increase from silent to like a dog barking, is much more than going from a static sound to dog barking. So you get less of a delta between the two sounds, and it will help prevent you from being woken up from sounds. You combine that with earplugs, you basically can't hear anything except for like fireworks. I have never been woken up from a sound by using a sound machine and earplugs, except for from fireworks, which are loud enough to just go through both. So if there are fireworks in wherever you live, you really can't block them. At least I have found. Maybe you could soundproof your room, and that would help. I do not soundproof my room, but that is an idea, I guess. You can also get blackout curtains, which are very similar to the sleep mask. I have some blackout curtains. They just block out more light. So if you live in like a city area, and it's really bright, you can do that. If it's not very bright around, you might not need them because, like I said, moonlight doesn't really affect you. So And then another thing you can do is keep the room temperature down. So you can have your AC or maybe open a window or have a fan blowing to keep the temperature down, because it's really hard to decrease your temperature at night. And we also need a decrease in temperature to fall asleep anyways. You need a 1, 2, 3 degree drop in temperature, which is why taking that hot shower helps, because it will help drop your temperature faster. But your temperature is going to drop when you go to sleep, because, like I was saying, you have a rise in temperature after your temperature minimum, but 11 hours after waking, your temperature is going to drop until 2 hours before waking. So your temperature needs to be lower to fall asleep. So making the room cool can help. You can always get warmer with blankets, and then if the room is cool, you can place a hand or a foot out, or you can take off a blanket and cool yourself down. But it's really hard to do that if the room is hot. If everything is hot, it's really hard to cool down. It's easier to put on more stuff and get warmer in a cold room than it is to get cooler in a hot room. Also, being too hot can give you nightmares, so that can affect your sleep. If you sleep with somebody else, have a partner, and you can't just have the room, you don't have air conditioning, you can get these little pads that go under your bed. I will put a link down below to the one that I use. But it basically goes underneath like the mattress cover, and it cools down below you. So you can set the temperature to whatever you want. It might be useful you can get like 2 of them for both people to have different temperatures if you want. So I like to have mine kind of cool, so you can use a cooling pad. I know there's also mattresses that do this, a company called 8 Sleep. If you just have money, you can buy one of those. And I will put a link down below to the one that I use. So another thing that I use is a weighted blanket. They're supposed to help you feel more relaxed. I don't know if I feel too relaxed, but I like it because it kind of keeps the blankets on me more even, and I don't like move around as much. I believe it's 10% of your body weight is about what you want to use. And I really like it, especially if you have a partner who likes to steal blankets from you. The weighted blanket is a lot harder to steal and will keep any blankets that are on you still on you. You might, all this notes, you might also want to get a nice mattress and a nice pillow, especially if you might want to spend a lot on them, because not necessarily saying that spending more money will be better, but in general, you probably will have to spend more to get a better mattress. You spend a third of your life sleeping. So paying for a good mattress will pay off quickly in terms of the benefits that you will get over the course of your life. Probably last you like 5 to 10 years at least, and you're going to be sleeping on that a third of that time. Something that Andrew Huberman mentions is elevating your feet to help with lymphatic washout, which can lead to more wakefulness. I've never actually tried it. I may do so in the future. However, if you have acid reflux, you want to do the opposite and elevate your head to prevent that. It's a lot of little topics to cover. You should have a wind down process. I kind of mentioned this in the ideal day, but as Matthew Walker says, falling asleep is more like landing a plane than flipping a switch. You don't just like lay in bed and fall asleep. You kind of lay in bed, relax, and then kind of fall asleep. So you need to ease yourself into sleep. So some relaxing things you can do some light stretching. You can meditate. Some people don't like to meditate because you focus too much and it can make you too aware. There are some different techniques you can use, and I will probably make a video on meditation. You can read, which is what I do at night. Sometimes I read nonfiction, but a lot of times I will read fiction because it kind of just takes me to a different place and I stop thinking about real life and I just fall asleep. You can listen to a podcast. That helps because you avoid screens. Take a hot shower at night, like I said, with the temperature drop. I like to be clean before I go to sleep, so I'm going to take a shower anyways. Don't take too hot of a shower, though, just to clarify, because it can damage your skin. So you want to take kind of like a warm to hot shower. You could do some journaling before bed. You probably shouldn't do it right before bed, like a couple hours before, but you can kind of write down your thoughts, your concerns, your to-dos. It can help people who have a lot of anxiety. Like I said, do that an hour or two before bed so you're not having that anxiety right before bed. And studies actually show that having a worry journal, so like writing down your worries, can help you fall asleep 50% faster. And I might need to start worrying more so that way I can have one. I don't really worry too much at night, but 50% is a pretty big increase. You should have a consistent wake and sleep time. It's going to enhance the quality and depth of your sleep if you do so, because you're going to be timing that circadian rhythm once again. So you'll have optimal cortisol rise, optimal melatonin rise, optimal temperature rise, optimal temperature drop. And since your body kind of tunes your circadian rhythm every time you do something, so like every time you eat, you exercise, you wake up, you go to sleep, it kind of does this little tuning. So you get closer and closer to having, the same circadian rhythm every day, especially if you do the same things, because it kind of tunes. If you do any shift work, you should probably watch Andrew Huberman's video on shift work. It's outside my scope to cover here because there's a lot of information on it. The best advice is to just stay on the same schedule as much as possible if you do shift work. Another thing to do is try to use your your bedroom for only sleep and sex. Now, for some people that won't work. Like, I work in the same room that I sleep, so it's not really possible for me. But if you can, it will add for a benefit to you. You do what you can. Don't keep any screens if you can, or watch TV if you can. You might not be able to, but ideally you keep it just for sleep. And now I'm going to cover a few beliefs that you should at least have in the back of your head. And these all come from Alex Hormozi, that entrepreneur that I talked about earlier. And I think that following these beliefs is what really will let you get superhuman levels of sleep, because it's not really about anything you do. It's just how you think about sleep. So let's dive into it. There's like 4 points here. Remove any I have to do this, need to do this. So don't say like, I need to take this supplement to go to sleep, or I need to have the room cool to go to sleep, or I need to follow my exact sleep routine. Try to do what you can 80% of the time, and if you can push further, do so. But don't let the process itself keep you from getting sleep. Don't believe that you need to follow this guide to get good sleep. It's just what I do. You might need to do something different. But don't think, I need to follow this guide. This guide is the only way to make me sleep. Or I need to do these things. Or, blah, 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 blah. Just keep yourself from thinking, I need to do this, because that will just add more anxiety. Have the belief that you don't need sleep. And this will also help keep you from getting anxiety about like getting enough sleep, and help during the day when you don't get enough sleep. You can get 9 hours of sleep every night, but you can still believe that you don't need a lot of sleep. Have the belief that you can sleep on the ground or a sleep dojo. So following this guide, if you follow this guide 100%, you will build a sleep dojo. You'll have, a sleep mask. You'll have blackout curtains. You'll have earplugs. You'll be able to breathe better. You'll have everything set up. You'll have your cooling pad. You'll have your room temperature set. You'll have a sleep dojo, so it'll be perfect for sleep. However, you may need to sleep somewhere else from time to time. Like maybe you travel in on a plane, or you spend a night at a friend's house, or any number of things happen, and it will depend on your life. But you should know that having all of these things doesn't necessarily, it will help you get better sleep, but you shouldn't keep it from making you fall asleep. You want to be able to fall asleep anywhere. And if you're super hardcore about this, you might try sleeping on the floor for like a week so you can sleep anywhere in the future. And it's a challenge that I might take on. I might try sleeping on the floor. It sounds terrible, but if I want to follow this belief, I should probably actually sleep on the floor. And then another great belief that Alex brings up is that 90% of the benefit is being in a dark room. And I kind of love this because if you wake up in the middle of the night, you can just tell yourself that I'm closing my eyes, the room is dark, I'm getting 90% of the benefit. Not only do I feel more rested when I do that, but I generally just fall asleep and have less sleep anxiety. And lastly, I want to cover my mindset about sleep. I used to think sleep was a waste of time, and I wish that I could just stay up all night. It probably led to me getting the insomnia that I had because I just didn't have the right beliefs about sleep. And honestly, if I could go a couple nights from time to time without sleep and be able to crush it out and not have any problems, that'd be kind of awesome. But going through this whole process, I've actually learned to enjoy sleeping. Like, I get excited to go to sleep. Not too excited that I'm awake, but I love going to sleep now as being someone who thought sleep was a waste of time. And I think I actually get better quality sleep because I enjoy going to sleep. So, learning all of this, I've really grown to enjoy sleep. And getting good sleep actually makes the whole process more enjoyable. So, it's kind of works all together. And some people may still want to skip out on sleep. They might think that 4 to 6 hours is enough. They need to rise and grind. I'm rising and grinding still, and I get 9 hours of sleep, or 8 to 9 hours of sleep. But you should try getting more sleep and getting better quality sleep because people are going to be the most productive in the long term by getting the sleep that you need and taking care of yourself. You'll be better in every single way by taking care of your sleep. And I take care of my sleep because it's the foundation of my health. It's one of the first steps that I can take to help improve myself so that way I can help others. So that's why I get good sleep, or part of the reason why. And if you've watched or listened this far, thank you so much. I've spent a lot of time doing research for this video, and we'll have more coming in the future. And I'm going to make a checklist that you can use, and I'll put a link down below to that. So that checklist will have a lot of the information that I've covered in this video, the ideal day and all the habits that you can follow, such as getting sunlight, all the little things that you can get to improve your sleep, and some basic information. I'll try to keep the mechanisms low on it and have protocol high on it. So it's basically, if you listen to this video and didn't take any notes, that's perfectly fine because I'll have a checklist down below that you can either use on your computer or print out, and it will cover everything you need to get better sleep. So once again, thank you for watching, and let's go out and improve ourselves.